Hello, my name is not. I am not a lawyer. My name is Anthony Watt. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a police form. I am not a judge. Lawyers, judges, police forms, and inter families, because uses of each age of correlation nature, certain type of victim slash hyper victim, since semi ancient times, that could not make proper means to overcome syntactically would have assigned the identities of names A through Z as self-valued roles within a value progression, defended syntactically, criminally foreign influence. Also, where and how what is communicated is other than what is said. Also, relative to where and to how we have black people's whites of eyes. And this has been left out simultaneously, for example, with the breaching method that employed those uses of black and white and of all natural difference /s for its breaching method to measure and maintain not only from abroad each modern country, for example, each semi-ancient name. Everywhere we are individuals, group, and or simultaneously, species volume, science /s, by the one that has humanity, black peoples, whites of eyes, that has all exceptions in demonstration of the same thing, which is, for example, why and how the other species have two eyes. Look at a giraffe's eyes, black peoples, whites of eyes. See, we have the same color eyes and we have different color eyes at the same time, simultaneously, / hyper simultaneous. Because there's another distinct identity of simultaneous nature that is not the giraffe, it is not the human, but it is anyway, while it is not. Because we are inside, we are semi-nature identity of relativity as a value / value progression to that which is hyper simultaneous. The existence of the fact that this giraffe didn't invent how the giraffe and why the giraffe has black pupils and whites of eyes. In the existence of where and how humanity didn't invent where and how we have black pupils and whites of eyes is hyper evidential. It is a hyper additional, hyper additionally distinct identity of simultaneous nature. Your hand is grouped, distinct identity. Also, it's an individual sequence / simultaneous nature from your other hand. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling. The identity all the sciences share. And for example, we have to know up front all the evidences. What's hyper evidential is that the ancients, before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced, they appreciated ancient artifacts like yin yang, like alpha and omega, other than could be afforded discerned by all natures of expert sense, and note how each expert has to rely on the syntax of other types of experts, and note how where this is relative to where and how they stack those laws. Before our founders were born, they did design the suburbs, tactically denatured, sustained, already being sustained, sickly, distinctly upon all natural differences, was also impositions on those identities as a sign. And still, black, white. You guys left out the breaching method with the logic and the defenses of passions and emotions. Descriptions of motivations, no. These were employed. These were propagated by the breaching method. They were self-cultivated, where and how manifest syntactically are all knaves. So leading up to the World Trade Center attack, in that context and since, remote uses of all natures of, of readings of statutes, certain type of victim / hyper victim, since you guys were kids. A breaching method was hyper sophistication here, since before the first identity of sophistication, before the first identity of wealth. It was already not only wealth, it was through other natures of wealth. It was off the books. Doesn't even need to be on the books. It's from ancient times. Even if that's not true. For example, it's relative to where and how the hyper-evidential shows. For example, it's more probable than what is convicted, and where and how it is relative, where experts have to rely on other types of experts. And for example, the significance of how at other locations, corruption at the locations with databases since before computers could be, was, and is effectively used remotely. The sense and sensibilities of everyone based on when they're going to be next to each other or not, and whether they know each other or not, including if they're family members. That is assigned where and how this breaching method showed. And showed. It shows actively better than perfectly. It has a method of showing how it already got all formal voices of the law and or as the nature of the law, which is simultaneous, the law / nature of the law. And on paper, it can be discerned it's a distinct identity of relativity to itself. Not only that stays functional, for example, where and how it stays bigger than right to left, no matter how far away we go. And with the Earth's relativity, all locations of space / existence are special. But Earth has an especial difference, especial, hyper additionally. But like every identity, it is relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. Again, into special relativity. But this is where and how nature communicates. Tactically ulterior then can be afforded discerned. And by a breaching method knew that all formal voices, all the identities, including as countries, as individual know. The volume of individual, grouped, and simultaneous, and stays in part inseparable from each part of that. Where and how the complete identity that is not mixed with all parts of temporary / lasting space / existence, no matter how big it is or gets, part of itself was greater than it, hyper greater than it rather, and was hyper more finite than it. While it was it and is it. And its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that we can discern to an extent how it is coming. Hypernative and showing us the value of indigenous populations not only prevented integrity by all formal voices of the law. And this is inseparable because before we come to learn how the breaching method employed black-white, it's while it was sustaining other things, others, ourselves. Blamed and defended, blamed, even with, but by each difference's own voices. So they could simultaneously not afford discern. The quality of fact, in other words, that their foreparents, as our own, everyone's that wants unabridged, hyper native, the identity that is actually not just reality, it's reality / hyper reality, so we could discern. It is the only one, is the only semi-nature that is positive and also positive unto itself, not as criminal insidiousness nature. Nature itself shows us the hyper-evidential can be used to discern how, for example, witch trials and Jim Crow laws and respects to the relativity / hyper-relativity of that, and leaving it out, where and how subjects really became, when we're only known, having been abridged, as the sciences, their names. See, this is simultaneously, additionally, and this is forgiveness, for example, and description of the differences between the Bibles. This is where and how the religions are also about law. And they are also about not an actual conspiracy, not a made-up conspiracy. They're about a hyper-archetypal, fact-cheaping nature-oriented breaching method that we have to address because it used tortures and it used extortion methods sustained to make self-value rules with fact-cheaping nature slavery / hyper-slavery, because it also maintained, it knew that nature would continue to demonstrate to humanity. There's a human fact-cheaping nature breaching method here. There's the sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, at all locations / S, everywhere the species body, the human species body, has a body of individual bodies. Because this part, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that is only increasing. And that's why and how every subject / S exists that way. So the ancients revealed easily. And before our founders were even, the ancients, before the founder, when I say our founders, I mean every modern country and every semi-ancient country name. Before they were even defenses of their names, legitimately. The difference of that, too, was employed by the breaching method that measured and maintained other things, others, ourselves. Blamed where and how it knew nature was demonstrating its roles with criminal insidiousness, but no one saw its roles with it, with fact-cheaping nature, and with the significance of that, with the relativity / hyper-relativity of that. So we have means to make a hyper algorithm too. For example, we have means to make a top on wealth that doesn't cap out people from jumping up to the top of wealth, but doesn't accept syntactically, then you have to keep your mouth shut. Bottoms that are below bottom, they're employed by a torture/extortion method. We have to address the torture and extortion of our founders, honestly. And that comes to their factual nature, how everyone was sickly, distinctly enslaved through all natures of independence, all natures of unity, all natures of positive treatments and or negative treatments and or exceptions. Relativity/hyperrelativity. There's an identity of it. So, for example, regarding case law, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a licensed journalist. There are readings of statutes that lawyers of the FBI and of Wethersfield Police are recorded and involved with, where they have roles at collusions, also with courts, at locations, at crime scenes, increasingly since founding. This is a crime scene/S, a hypercrime scene/S. Whether they were made up completely or not, we know to an extent they were made up. Witch trials. We're not supposed to separate what is actually simultaneous and what is actually hyper simultaneous, because we know that we were used remotely through other nations and their companies, and they were using their own, because they were also, everyone, in other words, everywhere there is an individualized leader and or a group with leaders, everywhere we are individual or grouped, and anywhere there's a humanity voicing, it was, since semi-ancient times, effectively measured and maintained uses of name /S, as each word is too. And this has differential hyperrelativity too. Where how the same identity that is relativity is /hyperrelativity. It's how it's making more of itself too. It's how, I already spoke, it's in the past, the beginning of the video. Right now I'm speaking, it's active. And to an extent, I know how it's going to turn out. But I didn't write anything down. But I know I'm going to read this. This is some case law regarding United States of America plaintiff appellates, cross appellate, versus Jerry B. Craig, defendant appellant, cross appellate, appellee. NOS 95-3734 95/377. United States Court of Appeals, 6th Circuit, argued June 3rd, 1996, decided November 8th, 1996. Defendant, in other words, I'm just going to get to the relevant parts of the case law and regarding conspiracy. And this does not leave out lawyers, because there are lawyers, including ones with badges and involved with WFSB, who have been attaching, they have roles with various natures of organized crime, bodies. And the difference of them and of a whole bunch of countries share roles with intelligence communities, with predicate acts methods, predicate acts with facts methods. One of the things that even blaming other things, others, ourselves, where the answer is the breaching method. A breaching method was responsible for assigning natural difference /S, blamed on other things, others, ourselves, where and how that those are natural answer /S, how natural communications was stayed, criminal insidiousness, fake integrity, but other pretended, is recorded. Donald Trump is famous for the phrase fake news. And the news, however, again, it hurts the individual voice of any leader, whether they're a Democrat or Republican, and or it helps them per motivations with subjects treatments, for example, with names uses. Unions are roles, timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at corners of buildings on campuses. And they have all kinds of natures of organized crime roles with families who are psychiatrists and at medical campuses and fire campuses. They have shared roles with other nations that are going through and have gone through wars, where and how this breaching method effectively employed to measure and maintain uses of words like wealth, like economies, like math, uses of the identities of the sciences, individually grouped and together, self-valued being and having been abridged, and roles with that certain type of victim / hyper victim that has shown how to explain that. Also, additionally, as a hyper victim, because there were uses of that were also singularly used in the past. And that caused a whole bunch of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and things it caused, and things that it caused people to blame it on, even when correctly. Specifically because the roles with it, the worst, like in other words, with foreign influences, but it doesn't come through, it's fluent through our nations. This is how they've had suits and ties, encounters, and exceptions and exception nature. Speaking about economies, measuring, effectively used to measure and maintain. Collusions, even on the FBI, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in his defendant capacity. He has roles with Wethersfield Police, other police forms, state police, people with Whiting forensics through times, the families of judges and prosecutors and doctors who've been planting evidences at crime scenes and on and off the houses of people, sending through the mail fake conversations, we're putting in quotes, fake conversations with adults and kids as their roles with child abuser principal and with abuses of those kids, sick of the leaders of the kids, sickly distinctly. There's a Dean Judd who's involved with the intelligence community with Berlin and with Kensington. For example, involved with the name Yagman, who's also one of the names next to Wethersfield High School, who planted evidences, and people I don't even know the names of, who are involved with names like Domain. There's a Domain family involved with intelligence community next to Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, in the buildings next to them. They're involved with, child abuses with families that are also being having been involved with all kinds of natures of roles with elderly homes at the same time and programs with that and veteran affair buildings. See, the second you see, if you're an honest soul And American history properly as we should have had it explained. Our founders had to counter-extort the other founders because of the tortures / extortion / slavery method entrenched North and South, not just against people the way we had it described in books. That's truths that were used for lies. And or so that person would be sensed through our own, let alone a group, even easier to discern. But only an individual can define the order of the finite. And nature just demonstrates that's one of the things it's demonstrating. Besides how we're supposed to appreciate how a sequence nature is a distinct identity of simultaneous nature, and how the species body is a sequence / simultaneous nature, while simultaneously, conversely, it is the opposite sequence nature. It is a sequence nature / simultaneous nature. Simultaneously / hyper simultaneously per where and per how, more and more forever nature is being made. And nature is being used as a word for the same reason that we need additional words for the identity of a verb than just a verb alone. It is also a participle nature, which is 3 ways grouped. The gerund is also a name of a verb, for a reason to appreciate this, and where and how. The identity of value progression / hyper value progression that humanity actually is. Value as value / nature / nature as value. No, value as nature / nature as value. Again, we are appreciating how we are a sequence nature / simultaneous nature. It's 3 volume sciences at once simultaneously. Correlation nature. The human mind appreciates, lists, tactical ulterior from the quote experts could afford to discern. And see, this breaching method knew that we would be increasingly reliant upon the value of the experts. For example, where we have to teach at each age of fact, cheaply, nature, sickly. I mean, maybe distinctly, sickly, distinctly. Each age of fact, cheaply, natures. Words are set-followed, either formally abridged. See, overt criminal enterprise is, plural, private ones, and unions additionally. And the branches of government, as criminal insidiousness nature legalized, for example, but criminally foreign influence. Readings of statutes enable that. Certain type of victim / hyper victim that employed uses of those differences with readings of statutes. And so hyper programming and hyper intelligence appreciates uses of lists in ways that regular programming can't afford to discern, because it appreciates use of identity by nature, the way nature is using it, where and how nature is also positive onto itself, where and how nature is automatically relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. Again, nature is being used as a word for the identity of the hyper-simultaneous, because we can only discern from inside of itself. Any subject treatment we make, individually, grouped, or together, has it has the value of a /, and plural, more identities of value progression simultaneously manifest the way it is because of how it is in demonstration of this. But we have what nature demonstrates replaced. So in other words, conspiracy regarding like 18 USC statutes and things like that regarding readings of precedents and statutes, where and how it is also hyper evidential, where and how other things, others ourselves, it's all, we're blamed, where and how a breaching method was supposed to be worse than war crimes is involved when we look at the sciences properly, appreciating the value they share. I mean, the identity they share. And any extent of that as any subject / S that we could bring together simultaneously as a list. Its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that are simultaneously equally increasingly value, where and how it is functional, where and how it can be discerned, that and how the actual identity of relativity / hyperrelativity exists. Live fist, but to shadow box. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling. They share they're about fighting, but by the rules. Where physics, metaphysics, and identities, volume / S sciences are simultaneously / hyper simultaneous. Manifest distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously / hyper simultaneously relative to why and to how also we are, again, individual grouped together. 3 simultaneously distinct volume sciences as one volume science. That is also a further hyper additional volume science as itself as a singular science, additionally from how it is here. But see, now there are other additional singular identities. There is the one of the breaching method. There is the one as self-valued roles with it as names uses individually grouped together as modern countries. And it is because of the uses of names at locations, areas, and states everywhere the human species body has a body standing. We are in a semi-ancient trap. It is hyper-evidentially recorded where and how we have not addressed, where and how actually the suburbs were designed. We have not allowed honesty by reception of our founders per application. The psychiatry there are psychiatrists who have badges, including ones with military too, at the same spots too, no, because they have roles with foreign militaries, and the difference of if our countries fight or like each other or not. That is also being and having been employed, where and how they get away with pretending to be integrity. See, where and how they have roles with all sides in criminal and in civil cases, victims and victims advocates, names of the hallways of the courts, and names of the courts at the same time, as names involved with as timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and a whole bunch of other countries that are shared on and off the campuses, like Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College. Former Director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has names who've been planting evidences on those campuses with child offenders and with placements in other words, and it's nothing personal against the campuses. They've been planting fake evidences on campuses filmed 24/7 relative to where and how there are remote uses of interbranch locations, and the difference between that and or the relative body dumping spots and murders and names involved and timed uses of it, which are also involved timed uses of wire crime methods with Wethersfield police. with state police forms and families interstate in their campuses. And then they pretend it's personal. In other words, these are people that have connections between, they make connections between people, they make fake exceptions. There's only 3 branches of government. This method with sophistication / hyper sophistication, consciously, in a sustained way, used all that. It forced everyone to be self-value rules, but the only means to cause positive value nature progressions before our founders were even born is if they took part with collusions against themselves and their own natural difference. This how they divided and employed Native Americans against Native Americans, and Native Americans against themselves increasingly, because that's what everyone missed. And when they were countering to it, the defenses of the fact, treatment, nature, quality aspects, including the ones not mentioned. See, this is reliant upon identities of logic that pretend with passions and emotions that the value of voting means what it doesn't. They're already shown means to discern how they pretended others made conspiracy theories, for example, and or a whole list of arrays of fact, treatment, nature, predicate acts with facts, roles that, and with the difference of if it's the interbranch doing it or the foreign, because they are increasingly at the same time kept collusions. So conspiracy to commit and they don't, and the lawyers on both sides of criminal and civil cases, then again through time. And that's manifest for how the locations are used criminally foreign influence. There are criminal foreign bodies involved, not just as countries, not just as private criminal enterprises originally and still uncharged relative to why and how uses of it forced. They're going to speak about economies, either leaving the breaching method out or blaming other things, others, ourselves, or valuing that having been. In other words, conspiracy to commit an offense, a conspiracy under key 28.1, 33.1, 43.12. Conspiracy to commit an offense against the United States, the conspiracy to defraud the United States under federal conspiracy statutes are two separate crimes. And government must allege and prove violation of one clause or the other. Specifically, defendant must be charged with conspiracy to commit an offense against the government and not conspiracy to defraud if there is a specific statute describing conduct involved in alleged conspiracy, 18 U.S.C.A. 371. Criminal law key 29.5. Charging a defendant under the fraud cause of federal conspiracy statute is appropriate when the conspiracy is alleged to have violated more than one statute, 18 U.S.C.A. 371. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves. They did that in the furtherance of uses of child campuses and with names involved with elderly homes and with judge and probate courts and Superior Court families and Connecticut District Court families, including judges and prosecutors, including names on off the state judicial branch offices of Connecticut and on off the state corrections offices, and roles with switching the names of that building. Because I have roles with the names on off it through time since its inception. With names on off Church Street in Old Weathersfield, and conjunctive and next to the campuses, planting evidences and acting while others take pictures for as their roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders that are manifest where and how that is one of the things that are manifest three ways, where and how sickly non-distinctly is gotten away with. Everyone being hurt sickly non-distinctly. By the same thing, we never counter it. It's recorded how we never counter that. When we could use that as the means to get agreements with the species bodies everywhere we have a body standing. Who denies that the suburbs of America or of the Russia or of Ukraine or anywhere across the globe, who denies that the suburbs were designed for tortures and for extortion and for slavery? Syntactical of differences words. Because this is one of the things that the identity of relativity / hyper-relativity is about, is difference. How it uses all difference / S. Hyper additionally from any way we can make up individually grouped or all together. We could all together agree at last to be the same system. If it's still, if we're not appreciating the hyper simultaneous, we're ignoring its system as itself. It will demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. In fact, for space nature transfer as a special difference is transfer. The loss of a special difference. The loss of what, in other words, there's where and how it is making more of its identity. It's making more of an identity of relationship to positive and negative simultaneously. Where its identity, as your own wants to make more of it, of that identity of volume you are, that is relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. Where it is making more positive unto itself. See, but this is per definitions of positive that are hyper additional with, while as the definitions we have in the dictionary today. But this is being degraded because where and how damage control and preservation of the sciences came, that remained defenses of roles with that. At the same time, you effectively used to screen uses of the sciences criminally foreign influence, uses of databases, locations. Per the Abridged method, uses of all locations / S. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about uses of our names, America. Countries A through Z. We are in a semi-ancient trap that measures and maintains collusions with itself through other natures of insidiousness, including the difference between that and the branches of government as criminal insidiousness, legalized. But it's criminally legalized, used, being and having been self-valued, left criminally for difference, roles with uses of difference. Tactical ulterior from how nature uses difference to communicate with ourselves. Not just because we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. And it's also relative where and how the relativity of this / hyper-relativity has been left out. That's hyper-evidential. And so lawyers, too, they're different. They have readings of statutes at locations, even online, consciously, while pretending other. They've been planting evidences and fake motivations. Where and how there are people that are reportedly Russian with the name Peruta involved with planting evidences against me. I tried to ask them online. So these are people with a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and co-defendants of his and their family members have roles with names like Mendez Police Farms on and off the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News, on and off the Wethersfield Police Department, involved with predicate acts with child abusers before they got caught, timed roles with a whole bunch of other countries, and names, foreign and domestic, and medical doctors, little kids, and with things like that, was recorded confessed when he was a little kid. Doctors associated with Eric Mendez. See, they told me things about him. I don't know him. They made a fake exception to make it syntactically make it look like I know him. Never saw him around my middle school or any other school. They made one quick exception on middle school. Has something to do with people involved increasingly with predicate acts with people in my area, and as ones who have roles with other locations. This is where and how they employ all victims / hyper victims, and then they pretend you're not treating them as a victim / hyper victims. They have employed, they're employing people that work for Modern Pastry to pretend motivations regarding privacy, wants for privacy, when a whole bunch of people tied to a Ray Colella and to a Timothy O'Brien and to Connecticut News locations and to a Maiano family. They have sequence shifts. They have roles with child abusers, planting evidences on and off campuses, including foreign and domestic medical. And they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through time. Intelligence community with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, including foreign and domestic military. They've been roles with medical locations, databases, and other types of locations simultaneously. The difference between that, as named, also roles with predicate acts with facts, roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, falsified police reports. Whole bunch of people tied to a Joshua Schumack and his mother, involved with KKK themed, black themed, and New Britain Superior Court, Hartford Courts, Connecticut District Court, roles with child abusers, with KKK black themed, Confederate flag themed, uses of intelligence planting evidence as fake motivations, faked integrity by unmarked police forms, and pretending, their defenses of their syntax regarding their passions and emotions, regarding what people speak online, including the courts involved. Before the World Trade Center attack, I recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through time. Little kids they're making confessions to little kids about how the adults have roles with New Britain Superior Court, with the court, with all the exceptions tied to them, and with New Britain campuses, criminally foreign influence, all natures of roles with identity. So when people pretend, these are a whole bunch of people that need to pretend politics mean what they don't, per uses of lawyers, all sides in criminal and civil cases, victims and victims advocates, and interbranch at the same time being used to stick fake things in databases. Effectively, they never stop being used remotely. All location /s. And there's a method by this. We have to appreciate the hyper evidential. But they're preventing us short words. So Connecticut Interbranch switches names and forges names and switches sequences while they're sticking fake things in databases, pretending passions and emotions as psychopaths know, and or differentially with the people tied to them, like prisons tied to them. There are people that work with Sandy Hook prisons and other campuses with the children, and fire campuses at Sandy Hook, Newtown, have roles with the intelligence community, and that also have direct and indirect roles with the names on and off the World Trade Center and the locations next to it, like the Ninth Circuit Court. Wethersfield Police recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with the state police families who themselves recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with them interstates. Whether they realize to the difference between if they realize or not is also being and having been employed. Where they keep the quality of fact, achieving nature, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, and then pretending other. So they have a whole bunch of natures of experts in Sandy Hook, Newtown, who are involved with various natures of courts and names on off the state judicial branch offices, and their family members involved with abuses of them, their own age of correlation nature and of themselves per this method. The motivations to appreciate, you have to use how everyone's discerned, used remotely, where and how the what is obligated by to be followed as mandated law is gotten away with. It has to do with how they have predicate acts with facts roles with little kids, pretending passions, motivations, and how they get it. They make exceptions, the exception nature and or responses to that. This is also where the kids have and the adults. Everyone has faked and changed words for them. Faked ties and natures of ties to other people. See, each of the sciences have where they have to have a job and roles with the economy, with no expert having defended the law's words, the law's nature's words, and their conjunction properly. See, this breaching method knew it child abused every person individually grouped in together to measure and maintain through our own who is going to use correlation nature, by where and how. Native Americans are a distinct identity of volume. I mean, per the breaching method, tactical ulterior from how Native Americans were employed by nature to demonstrate to us a breaching method is employing all natural differences to mean what they are not, and or to sense roles using short words. Therefore, their protraction, where and how short words come with revelations, if they are not entertained by others, or by that self, where their logic is to protract. For example, we have black pupils, white survive. This truth comes with revelations. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. This comes with revelations. There is an identity of sequence nature that we can't be, but we are it anyway. And it needs the other and wants the other species' bodies to be that too. All exceptions and exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other. They are simultaneously in demonstration of the same thing, /s, and as demonstration of its identity of volume to the extent we can extern, its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, how they are only increasingly equally valued. Physics, metaphysics, and identity are three bound volume sciences. See, reason uses what is constant and what is variable. Additionally, from how math could appreciate syntax appreciation of our identity of value/value progression. The nature of debates regarding such is also, we have to discern how it has stayed criminal insidiousness as nature. Criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and or of negative treatment. So there are lawyers of and associated with and their family members, with the police chief Centron, and 1 year before he was police chief of Wethersfield for years, and 1 year before him, involved with the same house /s, with various natures of predicate acts with facts, and other natures of organized crime acts roles through others too. They're also lying about their motivations of what would they think about when we use their names or other people's names. Again, they've been attaching everyone to faked and changed communications. They've been doing this with placements at the campuses. Rocky Hill campuses also have roles with Weathersfield police forms, with other police forms, FBI. A whole bunch of people tied to a Mayano families involved with child abusers that are medical, or also as their roles personally criminally involved too, with judges and prosecutors. There's ones named Salisbury and Brian Silver, and they're involved with child offenders before they got called leaders of the kids and their kids, abuse of their kids, so they could get them to abuse other kids' kids. Where and how they are, the abuses come in the form of fact, human nature, predicate acts, roles, criminally foreign influence, wire crime acts and methods, roles of Weathersfield police, and the difference between them and the other police forms are juxtaposed with them. Excuse me. And they have roles with torture leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context to lock it in, pretending other. Because they're used remotely where they're shown, like, for example, January 6th treatments, they are fishing for means to hide what they pretended not to realize, where and how they've been pretending that they don't realize. For example, lawyers, they're using truths for lies. They're hiding uses of that remotely when they're asked to speak on their expertise and or relative to what people say, and or relative to where and how they also have tactical delusions, which is relative to where and how they prevent writing unless it's going to be ignoring what's actually recorded. And that doesn't leave out the collusions with the interbranch, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of the logic of and or of the nature behind, sometimes he has the nature, in other words, of people A through Z regarding voting. For example, the voting locations have not stopped roles with predicate acts with facts methods, making it uses of words like allegations, criminally foreign influence. So, in other words, WFSB has roles with lawyers like Trantolo and Trantolo, and they have that place advertisements with them. Where also the difference between those lawyers involved with predicate acts with them, whole predicate acts methods with them, and the ones that work for them, like the ones that attach me to fake conversations with themselves to force a since proven child abuser principle. There are roles with the names Thomas Dillon and Kevin Dillon and Anna Dillon. How she switches it to Annie Dillon is also her roles with a whole bunch of names on off two-route highway, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with judges, prosecutors, and their extended family members also planting evidences, also relative to where and how simultaneously child abuse when they were kids, used to attach people to fake locations, fake ties, fake natures of ties to others and to themselves, fake exceptions, with some that weren't even at all and some that I made up, and the difference between that, because these are roles with remote uses of all sides of cases, and the interbranch, and the victims and the victims advocates and the lawyers, and the sources of all sides, interbranch, grouped and together. They have roles with predicate acts with facts methods. As natures, remote, they have real roles with remote uses of their nature. When people say, oh, it's not significant, we have black pupils, whites of eyes. And now they're going to say this, and they're going to get away with it distinctly based on what pigment we have. They're going to blame the motivations of the person who's honest and trying to bring in the relativity, the hyperrelativity here. So they've been hiding things from. See, I was tortured. I'm losing my teeth from it. They, they locked me in Hartford Hospital 3 times. 2 times it was for a month each time. And these are people with the name Leahy. There's a Judge Killian, and there are ones before him. And there are military, foreign, and domestic, leading up to the World Trade Center attack and in that context and since, who have also been fabricating fake conversations with me about the World Trade Center and through the mail with the FBI, other agencies, their family members. They had something to do with their roles all along Route 175, I believe is the name of the route. Like Wells Road and Weathersfield, all along the spots next to Webb House. The transition of that name and then further changing it, and the motivations planting, because there's remote uses of that and conversations on and off the locations there, all with names all along Church Street in Old Weathersfield. They've been planting evidences on campuses and with the intelligence community, and the difference between them and, as the names, timed roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and unions at corners of buildings, make fake exception of knowing people that never even had class with them. They have roles with Mr. Neville, who had me in a summer school class to pretend I knew people that I never even saw around my middle school. And one kid that was involved with fake exception, one time I saw him on campus at Highcrest School, one of the DeMar brothers, involved with a Mr. Abruzzi. And there are kids, the difference of their ages with the Abruzzi family has roles with identity thefts and frauds, where they're putting predicate actions to databases. And they're putting little things that they're exploiting also at other locations like crime scenes, where they're having instances recorded real that are collusions with the fake things at the same time. So increasingly they can't deal with what they have real that comes before them as collusion with all crime scenes and with the hypercrime scene that employed all locations to have either the branches of government or the overt criminal enterprises and or the private ones and or the insidiousness of people A through Z to blame other things other than themselves. Then the breaching method for what caused things like witch trials, what caused things like slavery. And so our founders told us to not leave out. Our fathers told us to get to the point to address the tortures and the extortion of George Washington honestly. And that comes with the identity theft, fraud, slanders against him that are recorded, self-valued by the experts on American history. For example, forgiveness is so we don't blame them. We're blaming other things, others ourselves, with the breaching method. Forgiveness is also so while we're not blaming them, they don't do whatever to keep the quality of fact, human nature, where and how they are supposed to be blamed simultaneously. They've been using difference, tactile ulterior, from the identity of value/value progression. That is why we have, and is how, all ways at once, how we have Black pupils, white survivors. All exceptions, exception nature, were created to pretend other. They're making fake exceptions. It is as criminal insidiousness nature. Even if all the countries agreed at the same time with all the indigenous populations that they're going to have roles with slavery, nature will demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. It will demonstrate a possession. It will demonstrate how its identity of possession. I mean, we could be systems other than its own. But that forces the difference between positive, that is temporary positive, and lasting positive from being discerned. But this is also where and how it is functional, where it is hyper invisible but still discernible. That's that which we must defend syntactically. So, for example, yin yang and alpha and omega are more probably and are more practically having been revealed together in ancient times, because this is a drawing of the hyper invisible but still discernible. That is conjunction to the invisible but still discernible. That all parts of each language are designed to teach about. See, we have the value of what a predicate is, simultaneously as the value of what a predicate act is. Worse than obfuscated in a breaching method showed the voices that spoke for the law that they already blamed other things, others themselves, where a breaching method was supposed to be blamed. They did not defend our founders. They valued, in other words, we're all exploited. Where and how they could get people used remotely against from abroad. We have to understand this. We have to understand what was the tactically denatured ground. Nature is going to cause negative value, nature progressions, action. They made the only means to cause positive value, nature progressions, action. Nature is therefore more and more is as if collusions with these systems, tactical ulterior from the one. That shows us how to cause evolution's fruits and gifts, means out of nowhere, including especially differentially, relatively, relatively to relativity, to the identity of relativity / hyperrelativity. Again, that's because for the same reason, a cell nucleus, a cell body, and a cell wall / S would be taught as three distinct, observed as three distinct identities of relationship to itself that the cell's identity, complete identity has. And again, each complete identity has a semi-nature relationship to that which has all identities of order / S as its own. Again, but we are not appreciating how it appreciates a special difference. Where and how the sciences are abridged, and that is being self-valued, because they're victims / hyper victims only allowed to be at those locations. Any location / S. In other words. And the difference between that and the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones, it makes uses of that consciously by themselves. They have roles with their patients and criminals before they got caught, as roles with predicate acts with facts at those locations. Certain type of breaching method that made people speak like pretending they could speak for honesty for themselves or for others, or if others are lying or themselves are, or the difference of that, to keep the conversation, the debate about difference, criminally foreign influence and or tactically delusions raw. So Weathersfield police have, with other police forms and with other branches of government, including mayors and their family members, are increasingly planting evidences on parks. They took pictures of me next to people I don't even know. Some of them I know the names of, like a Danielle Perron and a Mark or Kevin Caron, or both of them, I don't know if they were there, and a Mark Violet. with one time they took a picture and Kevin Justin Klovinskis took a picture of me at a park next to them to pretend I know them. They made other fake instances too. It had something to do with their roles all along Route 175 and how they planted evidences with names near me. Sequence shifts, for example, as their roles with sequence shifts with names on off the locations of the World Trade Center leading up to the World Trade Center attack in Manhattan. In that context and sense, the same names interstates involved with Florida, Washington, like former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has been involved also intercities, planting fake things, doing little magic tricks, where and how they have just such easy remote control of them pretending not to be criminally foreign influenced. Every modern country's named in 3 branches of government and or the exceptions tied to them. And then they're grouped together here with the campuses. The same names recorded have roles with that locked self-value at criminally foreign influence uses of corners of streets. For example, as roles with corners of buildings and where and how they have perception involved. They're planting fake motivations increasingly because the breaching method knew that nature would continually demonstrate itself involved with the motivations, involved with all the questions that are asked by nature. When we hear about things like witch trials and or about slavery, and then while we're hearing what's actually communicated, where black and white is brought up and they leave out the breaching methods and employments of that tactical terrier. Hyper additionally too, from how nature uses it. But know how nature is also using it to make more hyper additional nature. See, but it won't. See, it forces Lisa of Hadid. Science reveals that Lisa of Hadid is more probably having been understood by the natures, observed by the ancients as forced space nature transfer. That's what we observe when we learn about extinctions. We observe forced space nature transfer, not death. That's also forced space nature transfer if it's murder or natural too. It's forced. We only live to a certain age. See, but this breaching method juxtaposed all natural difference /S, individually grouped and together. Syntactical employments of that, uses of that, where and how it is manifest, where and how we are manifest as syntax nature. Tactical ulterior than the formal will allow discern and or the overt criminal enterprises. And self-value, because this breaching method backed them into defenses of positive and or of negative treatments and or of names treatments, timing treatments, quality aspects of fact-shooting nature, where they both self-value roles with sick at each age of fact-shooting nature, sickly distinctly too. Short words and logic, Boolean logic. See, the history of algebra came from ancient times. Then it was criminally foreign influenced. Therefore, descriptions of how reason works. All stupid jerks became. And the value of that is demonstrated when we contemplate why and how would anyone self-value roles, blaming other things, others, or selves for what our founders told. Our founders were the Native Americans. They are the Native Americans. Nature shows us our founding was never free too. Per what was already entrenched. Use of the difference between the fake law voices, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the difference of that. Insidious identities of the science's voices. Certain type of victim / hyper victim, of course they have excuses. Of course they have to pretend to be against people using excuses. If they keep a nature, quality of fact human nature, or aspects of fact human nature, or nature itself, can't defend itself. So the Republicans and the Democrats have a whole bunch of help, what they call their help. They can't defend themselves and afford unaccosted. Short words and revelation, when they are coupled by nature, that's going to protract with the uses of the revelations that come from having short words, like the short sentence. We have black pupils, white survive, and exceptions in exception nature. But other, no, well, let me change it. We have the same color eyes, while we have different color eyes at the same time. And that's in demonstration. I mean, and other was forced told and is forced told. With those revelations, protract with more truths. We have black pupils, we have the same color eyes, while we have different color eyes simultaneously. There is an identity of hyper-simultaneous. There is an identity of relativity. That is being replaced with words like theory. People want to have a debate about theory. People want to call people names like narcissistic, and or simultaneously, while others call them stupid, while others call them, we have locations names. People like each other or not. Those locations are identities, like identities of law. They have to hide life progressions at other locations. They have to pretend they could speak for practical reason. This breaching made them psychopaths. Black pupils, white survive. Here! We know. They switch names into branch. Connecticut into branch. Interstates, but also intercities parallel. They've been putting fake exceptions, fake motivations, and been coached to it for their own motivations, sometimes to lower, regular people, if they are government or not. They're juxtaposed with them. That's what's recorded. And or the former director of the FBI, for example, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act. Someone associated with countering things like criminal foreign influences, countering things like predicate acts, with facts, for example, used to screen collusions with those predicate acts with facts, the worst. Collusion with the worst uses of overt criminal enterprises and of private ones. Timed rolls at corners of buildings with overt, at the same time with unions too, per remote uses of readings of statutes at all locations /s. And the difference of that, the differences of that, so, or how remote interbranch locations are used remotely every day. Many pray. And there's been, so then they're showing needs to hide that because there are means to discern using the hyper evidential. Thank God, individually grouped and together, all the voices of the law everywhere the species body stands, All readings of statutes and precedents have stated criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and or as collusions with exceptions and exception nature. Because nature uses it, exception nature, hyper additionally for any ways we could invent or reveal because of how it is itself. Hyper additionally. Not juxtaposed and having not been juxtaposed. While being and having been juxtaposed with matter. Part of the ways it was not juxtaposed, one way the ancients revealed the best way syntactically to describe it and observe it, it is more finite than the finite. It's complete identity, the hypersimultaneous. And it is greater than all things simultaneous, all parts of space/existence before they were generated, while they were being generated. It stayed greater than and more finite than the smallest detail. And the active. Know how we were active when we were speaking, for example, therefore. The value, part of it comes at the beginning. Part of it comes, we had control of it. Now it's here. Until we complete what we have to say. So the interbranch with the foreign, they've been attaching us to faked and changed words, fake ties, fake natures of ties to other people. To counter this and get over it on it, getting over on us through our own and or through the foreign. The difference between that is also haven't been applied. They have recorded self-value roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, where and how they are, readings of statutes that give the benefit of the doubt to people based on if they're lawyers, if they're not. In other words, they're leaving out what's actually recorded. So conspiracy 23.1, lawyers are not held to a different standard from non-lawyers when their participation in a conspiracy is evaluated. 18 U.S.C. 371. So WFSB has professional lawyers, and they have roles with lawyers that place advertisements on television companies, on networks, locations, and through them, and at the locations they go, and regarding their uses of social media for predicate acts, cover-ups, while pretending other too. Motivations planting came before. So WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves about World Trade Center attack. And they attached me with fake conversations with others about the World Trade Center attack, including doctors, including ones with family members involved with a whole bunch of people who planted evidences on my street and uses of little, like, in other words, there's a pond, and the pond's like all dried up. Now they let all the New England ponds go dead. Till denatured, tactically denatured before that. Landscape theater is across the globe. Science, integrity, the quality of fact, human nature can't defend itself and afford to discern the answers where and how it's either the quote facts, truths. So they're using truths and facts for lies. And they're shown they're needing to self-value precedents having been doing this, having done this. They employed the experts on logic, the experts on history to self-value uses of that, to get over on the fact and the revelations that come from the truth that our founders communicated for us to communicate about how they had to, and to understand why and how they had to counter-extort the other founders. No one had free speech. If they tried to have free speech, they would have been sent through our own in defenses of quality of fact, human nature that had been criminally that have been criminalized, either by themselves, relative ways, and or the overt criminal enterprises, and or the private ones, and produces of the difference of that. And that's relative where and how defenses of bullying logic have stayed incapable of defending themselves and affording immediate corrections to illusions as collusions at the worst crime scenes, because all crime scenes have stayed roles with the hypercrime scene as a singular method to consciously use of all identities of difference as volume, as a volume science, as reasons, which uses ratiocination / hyper-ratio / pseudo-ratiocination. And it values where pseudo-ratiocination and the comparison between pseudo-ratiocination and ratiocination being relative to its identity of value progression. We're using where and how we could discern a distinct identity of hyper-simultaneous. And it is distinct from God. God variable. There's a God variable that is more probably and demonstrably having been described and needed by functionally by the ancients, who also revealed the republic for which we stand, America, and other modern republics. The sciences, before they became criminally foreign influenced, humanity valued how difference can be used to discern what it's communicating with us, as us, while not. And increasingly the value of that. And it shows us its identity of relationship to itself. And the value of that is inseparable from the smallest finite detail of reality. Even if someone makes something up, it's three identities of possession over the smallest details of what they make up, over the group details, and over them all together. Black pupils. Yeah. So you've been telling to black pupils, humanity, you've been telling to humans names, the other things, others ourselves, were the cause of why and how. Other than nature and why and how we have black pupils is pretended research regarding such and its quality, like for example, and its communications with us. So this is one aspect not only of slavery, but of that slavery non-distinctly against everyone and against our founders. See, but this is being obfuscated to our own self-value because everyone came child abused, identities of logic backed into pretending you could speak for practical reason, and or as roles as kids or adults, and the difference between that too needed to sense, because correlations words are going to use for correlation how the branches don't have integrity. You could look at New York City knowing simultaneously how the suburbs and what they were designed for, and obviously no integrity spoke. And knowing sometimes our founders are slandered in our faces. They have people with Wethersfield. I don't know if that they have Central Connecticut have roles with Central Connecticut State University and with the Wethersfield town offices and on off other elections locations. But I noticed on they have on a YouTube video with a town meeting, they have it where you can't type anything. And the guy said preemptively, he wants to remind everyone to have not demeanor. It was just used in another state. But in other words, we have lawyers that are being and haven't been used remotely, leaving out exceptions, making them up, and planting fake motivation. And that is easy to discern. And we have these hyper evidential proofs, like how we have nature communicating other about what black/white means and what it meant to our founders and how they get away with this and how they got away with it is relative to where and how they have employed the experts on the identities of the sciences, uses of those expertise to get over on people's short words, to force equality of fact-human nature as criminal insidiousness, as nature's definition of it. See, nature has means to demonstrate what's going to cause positive or negative value nature progressions, acts in nature, but the appreciation of that syntactically. It has people pretending passions and motivations that can't get away with that and afford to discern properly. All that's attached with each instance description, each name description is hyper forensically traceable to where and how consciously other things are communicated for our founders than they communicated to have communicated for themselves, and with passions behind it. And that's simultaneously where conscious uses of distinct natures of organized crime are involved with the reception of the sciences by each individual, by each group difference, and altogether everywhere there is a campus. Here, homeschooled too. And the assignment of natural values like adult or kid. See, this is part of how they get away with keeping self-valued rules. Timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. All natures of investigators. They never stop being collusions. You have to go by what they've been doing between the campuses, what's actually recorded. How actually we need to bring up people's names or not. And how the difference of that is also used consciously by roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases, defending only qualities and aspects of fact, human nature, fake sides of pseudo-correlation. And tactical delusions are maintained, self-valued by the voices of the law as each modern country. Forgiveness is simultaneously for them, so we don't keep the breaching method blamed on other things, others or ourselves, but it is also for ourselves if we use the hyper-evidential properly and try to give them forgiveness properly. They'll change it and make us, because they need to keep blamed on other things, others, ourselves. The real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts in nature. What is actually recorded discernible. For example, what was actually, in other words, they're leaving out exception nature. They're leaving out when anyone speaks for passions and emotions of themselves and or of others. That's one of the ways I'm not a doctor, per the definition of psychopath. That's what speaks and has spoken formally for our founders and for these colors, let alone those in the possession of them. Simultaneously, black pupils, whites alive, as our course abridged, that's hyper-native pure. So we need a hyper-native tribe too, because Native Americans have entertained what they cannot entertain, and afford discerned how the Native Americans are our founders too. But it's not, oh, this from, it's a broken grammar school conversation. We have to deal with the predicate acts with facts rules. We have to deal with the charging criminal enterprises wrong to keep counter how we are grouped, how those group differences, the difference between the criminal and citizens as the interbranch, the overt criminal enterprises, or the private ones. The difference of that too is consciously used by all of them. Timed uses of that. Per what timed collusion unions right on the corners of buildings and of campuses. Local 230 has recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with names at Whiting Forensics since I was a kid, planting evidences with judges and prosecutors next to campuses with foreign and domestic. These are people leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. Connecticut courts were planting evidences intercities, West Hartford locations, planting people on campuses that they use with their sense and sensibilities are gonna, they're gonna hide all the ways that they're criminally foreign influence. And when you speak about other, when you blame other things, others yourselves, or getting away with someone trying to discern this. I mean, trying to communicate it. In other words, the revelations that come with it, how the identity of nature communicates is where and how we have black people's right survive. Where and how it is and was other than is formerly pretended. See how that has gotten away with is needed to be discerned increasingly too, because they're planting fake motivations. The January 6th treatments have roles with planting all sides in criminal and civil cases and juries, and people that seat the juries criminally foreign influence to pretending other. They never had no. There's a guy, in other words, the people they have with the jury they have readings of statutes with the intelligence community, including judges. They coach the news media to tell lies, and they lie about their actual motivations and of all that actually involved with it. So Central Connecticut State University has roles with all the names known involved with the World Trade Center attack and with the wars, like even Kuwaiti generals and their extended family members involved on off Central Connecticut State University, with deans of that campus, their family members, involved with Weathersfield interbranch family members, and people associated with them. Timed roles increasingly with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and as fact-cheaping nature uses of corners of streets, and of as the ones roles timed use of corners of buildings had roles as collusions with means to discern recorded conscious uses of all sides in criminal and civil cases leading up to in the World Trade Center attack context /X/S. And that's with the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center towers right before they were taken out. Proven after the attack. They had post-dated documents insidiously from inside the Ninth Circuit Court to have that presented to the panel of judges. They also had names associated with all sides in that case and their sources involved with wire crimes with Weathersfield police that are ongoing and increasing, and with WFSB Rocky Hill locations and names next to their location involved with the intelligence community with them. Since I was a kid, since everyone was a kid, intercampuses, they're making connections between campuses and names that are faked, and they're exploiting that. Where and how in ways the breaching method knew they would, but they don't understand. But to the extent where everyone stays names, and that's also hyper evidential, while pretending other. So they're putting me to fake conversations and communications, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people I never had anything to do with, mixed with people they made fake exceptions and demonstrations, the same thing. they ever tried to put that on paper, it would show that with what I'm trying to tell you, leading up to the World Trade Center attack, in that context, and since interstates and intercities parallel with it, the same names interbranch, they're recorded since how they were kept criminally foreign influence with overt criminal enterprises, private and private ones, and the interbranch. Uses of all along Route 3 with names planting evidences, for example, which is one of the conjunctions to the state judicial branch offices. These are also timed roles with the witness protection program and involved with all sides of criminal and civil cases, including ones associated with that. Don't forget, too, they failed to blame properly that which made criminal enterprises and maintains criminal insidious natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, and or of names treatments. In other words, names as scientific values to where and how American history's values are taught to abridged, and others pretending how that's gotten away with. Quality aspects and nature of debate is criminally foreign influence and simultaneously tactically delusions wrought. So we have to counter criminal interbranch switching and forging names because they are being and have been used remotely. Everything that came before them. Certain type of victim / hyper victim made to speak for the law after they came through what they came to. And but we had a good campus. In other words, even the difference between good and the differences between the campuses, they can't discern what is actually recorded when they pretend their passions and emotions, whether they like their schools or not. The positive and or the negative treatments are not, both are sick. Because and wherever there's a positive or negative treatment, there's an identity treatment. This is part of what languages were revealed to teach before the sciences became criminally foreign influences. Tactically delusions raw, again, simultaneously. Oh, you're saying we're tactically delusions raw. Get on paper, one name in sequence. Get them on paper, please, Your Honor. They also have the employees. They have the campuses that are training the digital police forms. Also, further roles with the World Trade Center used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. Follow, and they're pretending that their care is about privacy because their roles with planting evidence is fake ties and fake natures of ties to people already. Those locations are already used at other locations interstate. So a whole bunch. In other words, you guys are forbidding me from having writing and other people because you've been using interbranch to fake things into the databases as collusions with crime scenes. Further guns and poisons crimes with the ones involved with wire crimes with Wethersfield Police, with the networks, judges, retired and standing. These are also retired and standing judges and prosecutors and their family members used remotely. Timed collusions with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and all these nations, how that we are shared on our campuses with families that are shared together. That's demonstrated involved with this. In other words. And they'll confess other, but they're being coached by the judges and the FBI and other agencies to hide life progressions. And or when we bring their names up, the other ones are the ones lying. So the interbranch switches names relative to and their roles with that identity theft, fraud, slander method used remotely already because of how they are used remotely. Certain type of victim / hyper victim. Forgiveness is so we can force the quality of fact-keeping nature that does not leave out correlation nature by our means to correlate a human fact-keeping nature. Hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise method has been and is involved with all syntactical names treatments as all location areas and state. Further, identity is ground too. per how it is functional, per how it is hyper invisible but still discernible. The identity that has manifest. The words of the sciences and the way they are manifest, except for how they have stayed, criminal and citizens' natures, of appreciation of themselves, therefore, incapable of the discernment of the appreciation of the identity the sciences share by any voice. Only an individual can defend the order of the finite. Our teachers think, thank you. Please have Fox Connecticut News and WFSB fix the fake communications with me and get those lawyers on paper. Also, lawyers, conspiracy, key 23.1. Lawyers are not held to a different standard from non-lawyers when their participation in a conspiracy is evaluated 18 U.S.C. A 371. So also the difference, that's also relative to where we can discern things, where and how. Trantolo and other lawyers, like Trantolo and people that work for them, are sickly, distinctly criminally involved with a conspiracy with WFSB that faked conversations with me as people that advertise through the networks involved. WTNH fabricated emails. They also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed WFSB that they're and other demonstrated the other news locations pretend it's personal, where and how they are being and having been coached by intelligence community, where and how it's relative because they're also criminally foreign influence, those same names. So a domain family has roles in what intercities and with Mendes police forms and families and associated with corners of the streets in Weathersfield, involved with sequence shifts, cover-ups of it, uses of it, roles. Take pictures of kids next to each other, then pretend they know them so they can plant evidences with people involved with predicate acts, with facts with them, with judges, prosecutors, not legitimate intelligence. So there are a whole bunch of confessions and things like that that are communicated when we're gonna demonstrate where communications, how communication is simultaneously greater than, while it is more finite than what is said. And we're also going to show how the value of what came first comes with this. Because you're right, that's also how they get away with pretending and discerning. That's how they really see and discern. In other words, people aren't lying to them. A lot of the time when they pretend they're lying to them too. Kids, for example, that they end up putting in jail in cities. You guys have been lying to those kids and roles with lies and uses of those lies even worse since they were near a database. And the same thing happened against everyone's parents, whether they realize it or not. They're attaching kids and their families to more and more fake communications with each other, fake natures of communication with each other. Even when they see this, they're jumping involved with, they're making people raise their voices or keep their mouth shut, where and how they're recording things after others are already recorded consciously, where and how we cannot leave out recorded remote uses of all investigators, relative to uses of campuses too. They do, so the males and the females involved in the intelligence community are used sickly, distinctly, criminally foreign influence. Intercities too, since they were kids. Before they, in other words, they have psychiatry, it's sickly, distinctly too. Most where it's concentrated with the interbranch corruption, timed collusion with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people with killers, their worst patients and criminals. And as their roles note with the worst offenses against innocent people increasingly at the location used to hide live progressions from other locations, used because they've been using those locations, how they train the intelligence community. A whole bunch of people tied to the name Violet, who planted, and Kolvinskis, who planted evidences on my street with a O'Brien family. I never saw on campus in my life. The only time I saw on my campus, one time they was with a it was one to run around pretend to be a horse, and one time was confession out of nowhere when he was in another class, and then walked into the middle of the thing when I was only me and him said the thing, a statement. So it was like a fake communications with me, a fake conversation with me, Tim O'Brien, and he said something. He confessed further about his parents' role with federal evidence crimes, federal rules of evidence as crimes. He didn't use those words. He didn't make complete sentences. These are roles with interbranch, pretending little kids don't speak clear, making them not speak clear in other words, they spoke clear. These are sick people with the kids and with the elderly homes. They have probate court judges with elderly homes and with veteran affairs buildings. These are the same names involved with prosecutors at superior courts at Hartford and Wethersfield. I mean, in New Britain. But Wethersfield's interbranch locations and names next to them increasingly planting evidences, fake motivations, faked syntax by their positive and negative treatments, their roles with identity theft, fraud, slander. Also, Wethersfield Pizza has been planting evidences, wire crimes with Wethersfield Police, and names on off the state judicial branch offices. Also involved with child offenders, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence just with them. As the people from Connecticut, involved with more World Trade Center attack roles, and with their neighbors, as the ones involved with Wethersfield Police with wire crimes with them, foreign and domestic military, to all exceptions tied to them. These are names with Sandy Hook, Connecticut, too, now that are intercities with placements at campuses, sick, criminally foreign influence. And then their family members have to run and hide live progressions because they had conversations. Oh, I know this person, they got locked in fake. Only 3 branches of government. When did they have integrity? Where? Years. Make sure, Judge Napolitano, please make sure that interbranch, you guys are preventing mandated law. Get them on paper in one name and sequence. Have them confess, and there'll be forgiveness for them. I need an immediate response for the confessions, and that which actually recorded I caught the principal child abuser involved with, which is other natures of organized crime at the same time and methods of them.